Hello, Dana.
Hello, hi Sally. Hi Heba. Welcome, ladies.
You want us ready with the notes, right? With the pen and the...
Today there's going to be a lot of, facts. It's not just eat this, don't eat this. And I'm going to also be asking you to think about your symptoms, identify your symptoms. So you might want to be writing them down as I'm saying them. If you're, like, oh, I have this, so that you can get clear on your specific imbalanced hormones and what are the symptoms that you have and what are the and also to keep track of them, because these are the ones that are hopefully over time, they're going to get reversed.
Perfect.
Right.
Excited. You didn't send us yesterday the link for our friends, the people who want to join you. You told
I did. I put it in the group. I'll tag you. I put it in the group.
yes, please.
I will
Thank you.
tag you after we're finished today.
Okay.
All right. Hi, Karen. Hi, Shadeen. All right. Okay,
Hi,
lady.
Dana.
Hello, hello. All right, let's get started. Today is a lot of information. We're going to talk about hormones. Like, do you actually know your hormones? What are hormones? What are these horrible things that are messing up our lives and giving us very uncomfortable symptoms, very painful symptoms sometimes? If I ask, I didn't even know actually what a hormone was. Like, I know of them, like I know we have them, but actually, even when I first became a health coach 10 years ago, because I got more like focused and specialized into hormones only about 5 years ago. So I actually only myself learned what a hormone is and what it actually does about 5 years ago. And when I usually ask women, what is a hormone? I get very interesting answers. Very few in the past 5 years, whenever I ask, very few have the right answer. So let's just start off with that. Put it in the chat what you think the definition of a hormone is. No judgment here, just whatever you think a hormone is. Straight off the bat, Shadeen, no idea. Love it. All right. Hiba, no clue. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna assume most of you are like in the same boat. Here's why knowing the definition and the explanation is so important. It's part of your empowerment around your body, right? It's about knowledge about how your body functions. And especially with women, when we get to this stage in our lives when hormones are playing such a big role in basically making our lives really, really difficult, and we don't know what they are. So this is important because, like I said, being empowered, knowledge is very, very powerful. When and if you need to go to a doctor and he's talking to you about your hormones, you want to know what he's saying. You want to be able to ask the right questions when he's telling you what's wrong with you. So I think a lot of times we feel that our body is just, or the body is just too complicated to understand, or that it's not for us to understand. Like the doctor knows best, and he's the one who understands how the body works, and he understands the functions of the organs and the functions of the systems. And like, who am I to understand my body? Like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the medical field. Like, why do I need to understand my body? But here's the thing. You don't need to be a medical expert to understand your body. And actually, you are the only one who can understand your body because you're the only one who's actually living in it. So don't let anybody ever dumb you down when it comes to understanding every little function in your body. We know, I mean, a lot of people will and doctors, I think, also will say, oh, don't go look this up on the internet, or, what did you find this information on the internet? As if looking up on the internet is wrong, as if looking up on the internet makes you less smart or less intelligent. The internet is there for us to self-educate ourselves. It is the biggest research database that we have. It can be abused, of course, it can be misused, but if you were to use it correctly, every little piece of information, every single question that you have The answer is there. Most people are just too lazy to go look for it. That's also a different story, but it's there. You might find contradicting views, and that's amazing because you want to be able to open yourself up to, right, so he has a view on this and this doctor says this about this. That's great because then you can look at both and make up your own mind, not have somebody spoon feed you some information and then take that as the truth. So all this to say, knowledge about your body is not something that's outside of your scope just because you're not a doctor or a medical professional. Every single human being has the capacity to understand how their body functions and be their own expert. All right. Yasmin has a definition: a substance naturally produced by an organ or gland, I can't remember, for a certain function. Yes, that is true. Your hormones are basically, they're chemical messengers is what they are. They're chemical messengers and they are produced in your endocrine system. So your endocrine system is basically a collection of organs, and that includes your thyroid, your pituitary gland, your adrenal glands, your pancreas. These organs are called the endocrine system, and they are the ones that produce hormones. And hormones are chemical messengers. So these organs produce the different hormones, and then they send them out all over your body to send messages to different organs and different systems in your body. So the messages are sent out to control and regulate, like heart rate, or control your temperature, your thermostat, or to control your period, or to control your immunity, or to help with your digestion. They're literally involved with everything. So it's really, really important to understand them because we always focus on them in terms of my period, right? I have a painful period, I have a difficult period, I have something wrong with my reproductive system, or usually the other main hormone that we're focused on are thyroid hormones. But they're literally involved with everything. Like, I can't think of anything that goes on in the body where there isn't some type of hormone working. So we need to have a balance. These organs that produce your hormones, all these different organs, they need to be able to send out the correct hormone in the right frequency, in the right amount, at the right time. So they're very, very delicate. Whenever you see that there's an imbalance, it's because something has been sent out either too much or too little, or at the wrong time. So I want you to think of your hormones. They all have to act sort of like a symphony, right? They all have to be playing on time and in tune. When one of them is off tune or one of them is off beat, it throws everything else off. And that's why you're going to find, as I go through the symptoms today, that you might have symptoms in more than one set of hormones, which is totally normal because there is a sort of a domino effect. So any imbalance in one hormone, because again, the body is one interconnected system, and your endocrine organs are not disconnected from each other, and your systems are not disconnected from each other. So if you do, as you're going through, find that you have symptoms in this set of hormones and this set of hormones and this set of hormones, it might feel overwhelming at first. It might feel like you have more things going wrong with you than you thought. Don't get overwhelmed. The reason we're doing this is for you to have a complete picture of your health and for you to understand what's happening. Overwhelm is something that, remember, it's not productive. It's not going to get you where you want to be. So if you have an initial feeling of, oh my God, all these things are wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with you. It's because the body's super smart. When one hormone starts to feel, challenged, another one has to pick up the pace, which will then challenge that other hormone. That's all that happens in this interplay when they become imbalanced. All right. So before we start the specific hormones, I just want to clarify the difference between menopause and perimenopause. So perimenopause is what most of you and us are in right now. And that can start anywhere from age 35 to about 50. Some women have it until 55. It's basically when you still get your period. You still have your period either regularly or on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. It can be on, off for years, and that would still be called perimenopause. Perimenopause is when we start to see the imbalance while you still have your period. So that's where you start to get, you know, the fatigue, like you're not usually tired, but all of a sudden you feel tired. The insomnia, you can't sleep, you have joint pain, the night sweats, maybe you get a little bit more moody than usual, maybe you get more anxious than usual. So this is the stage that comes before menopause. Menopause is when you actually haven't had your period for 12 months in a row, consecutive. If you don't get it for 3 months and then you get it, that's still perimenopause. If you don't get it for 6 months and then you still get it, that's still perimenopause. You're only officially in menopause when it's been 12 months, all right? And the symptoms are pretty much the same as perimenopause. You know, you're still going to be, you know, maybe sad, maybe weepy, maybe having trouble sleeping, you know, the mood swings and all of that. It doesn't differ that much. The main difference is that with one, your period is either regular or going on and off, and with one, it's completely gone. All right. So let me know in the comments, which stage are you all at? Perimenopause or menopause? I think most of you here are perimenopause. Oh, Senna is menopause. Okay, perimenopause, neither. Okay, so here's the thing. When you're in your early 30s, the body begins to prepare for perimenopause. So around 35, between 35 and 40 is when you can say, I am in perimenopause. Before that, especially if you're feeling symptoms, there's sometimes shifts that happen that you don't feel anything because there's no symptoms, but we know that the body is getting ready for it. So if you're feeling symptoms, then know that that process has already started for you. Okay, but perimenopause, run up menopause. Oh, okay. So more ladies in menopause than I thought. All right. Okay, so let's get started with the hormones. There's a lot of hormones, a lot, like big ones, little ones. I'm not going to talk to you about every single hormone that there is. I'm going to talk about the 3 main groups, and these are the ones that are mostly affecting you right now. All right, you have 3. This is where you want to maybe take out your pen and paper. 3 sets of hormones. You have your sex hormones, your stress hormones, and your thyroid and metabolic hormones. 3 main sets. So the first category we're going to cover is sex hormones. So this is the one, you know, that's giving you the night sweats, it's giving you the irregular period, it's giving you the endometriosis, the PCOS, all of that. You have 2 primary female sex hormones that are produced in your ovaries and your reproductive system, and that is estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is that hormone basically that makes you female, right? It's the one that gives you your breasts. It's the one that gives you your soft voice. It's the one that gives you, it regulates your period. Make sure that you have your period every month. You wouldn't have your period without estrogen. It gives you the curvy look. Some of us might not like the curvy look, but that's a result of estrogen. It's basically the opposite of everything that makes men male, which is testosterone. So that's their equivalent. So everything that makes you female in terms of bodily functions, emotions, the way we think, all of that comes from estrogen. So it's really important to know because estrogen is one of the main ones that can start to act up in perimenopause and sometimes before you hit perimenopause. The other one is progesterone. Progesterone is the other main one, but it helps to also regulate your menstrual cycle, but this one really plays its role during pregnancy. So when you're pregnant, it's also produced in your ovaries, but when you're pregnant, the main function of progesterone is to basically make sure that the fetus, the embryo and the fetus survives, that it remains viable, right? It helps to promote the survival and development of the embryo and the fetus. So this is one of the most important ones you need to know. If you have any imbalance of estrogen, this is what it looks like. Here's where I want you to take note. If you have an imbalance of estrogen, and an imbalance of estrogen doesn't mean that your body is producing too much or producing too little. The reason the liver is so important and we're focused on detoxing the liver is because the liver is responsible for filtering your body's supply of estrogen. So your body could be producing the perfect amount of estrogen every single month, and it needs to produce a certain amount. The ovaries are going to pump out estrogen every single month to regulate your period. You go through the whole cycle, you menstruate, that estrogen then goes to the liver filters and processes the estrogen that has been consumed that month, and then the body needs to eliminate that, we call it dirty estrogen. It's used, like it's just already been applied, used, you don't need it anymore. The body has to get rid of it. So to make space for the fresh supply of estrogen that's going to come the next month. But if your liver is overburdened and tired, and if you're eating all the foods that we removed, and if you have all the symptoms we're talking about, then we know your liver is tired. And the liver has something like 6,000, 7,000 functions, one of which is to filter out estrogen. Then the liver can't filter out the estrogen every single month. So the estrogen is going to make its way to the liver, but the liver is only going to be able to like maybe filter a little bit out, none of it out. And then it cannot, if the liver can't filter, the body can't eliminate. So what's going to happen to this used dirty estrogen? It's going to stay in your body. It's not going to get eliminated. It's going to stay. And then when you get the fresh supply the next month, the same thing is going to happen again. And that supply will stay. And then you keep doing that over and over and over again. And that's how you get excess estrogen. Not necessarily because your body's producing more, but because your liver is not able to filter the amount, get rid of it to make space for the next month's supply. All right, so here's what you can feel when there's an imbalance in estrogen. Irregular periods, all the symptoms of PMS. So the headaches, the moodiness, the cravings, the irritability, the skin breakouts, weight gain that sort of happens over a period of time when you haven't really changed what you're doing. So if you're somebody who eats in a certain way, and whether you exercise or not, you've sort of been steady in your weight regardless, and you just continue doing the same thing you've always done, but you slowly see your weight creep up, that's a sign of estrogen imbalance. If you're constantly craving sugar, if your breasts are, you know how they get tender before your period and sort of swollen and tender, if before your period, they're really, really uncomfortable, but sometimes that can stay with you the whole month, that's a sign of estrogen imbalance. Night sweats, hot flashes, and a low sex drive. So all of these are symptoms. Obviously, if you have a diagnosed condition, so if you have endometriosis, if you have PCOS, if you have fibroids, those are a clear sign of imbalanced estrogen. So how many of you here think that it's your sex hormones that are imbalanced? Based on those. Hiba says me, Shadeen says me, Abid says me, Rana, me, Riem, me. Okay. All right. Yeah, very, 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 very common. Very common, especially when you're in perimenopause, and even if you don't have the major diagnosed symptoms, you're feeling the uncomfortable shift. Here's the thing about perimenopause, though, and menopause. They're supposed to happen. They're supposed to happen. They're not a medical condition. So when you get perimenopause, when you hit perimenopause, and when you finally get into menopause, this isn't a medical condition that needs treatment. It's the end of your reproductive capacity, the end of your reproductive years. Think back to when you were 12 or 13, some of us were 14, when you first got your period. Think about that, if you can recall. Nobody interfered with that, right? There was no intervention. There was no medical intervention. There was no, oh my God, let's give her these pills so we can stop it. Oh my God, let's give her this so we can, delay it. Nothing. Nothing, because it's a natural process. The end of that process, perimenopause and menopause, is just as natural as the beginning of this process. And yet, for some reason, it becomes this big medical issue when we hit this phase. And they need to give you, they recommend they give you hormone replacement therapy, or they recommend removing an organ, or they recommend birth control pills, when really the shift is supposed to happen, right? That shift in your hormones, which leads to perimenopause and menopause, is supposed to happen. That part is not optional. What is optional is the symptoms. So to the degree that we see the shift happening in your hormones, we're going to see the severity of symptoms. If your hormones are only supposed to shift this much, but they're shifting this much, this is where we need to see why there's an imbalance. The problem is not there's a shift. The problem is if the shift is too much. And the shift, when it's too much and you see all of these symptoms, it's always because a nutrition and lifestyle issue. It's not because you have a deficiency in hormones. It's not because you have a deficiency in birth control. It's because the hormones are doing what they're supposed to do, shifting, but they're just not able to do it properly because the environment they're in is too toxic. So I don't want you to think of yourself, perimenopause or menopause, that this is a condition or this is something that needs to be dealt with. We are applying a very holistic approach so that you can go through this phase. You're going to go through it. The idea is to go through it without having to suffer the unnecessary symptoms that happen unnecessarily because of the way we eat and drink and live and breathe and move. But of course, if they told you that, all the ladies would walk out of the doctor's office, they would apply that information, they would apply that advice, and then you basically wouldn't need your gynecologist except for emergencies. But they can't tell you that, right? And very, very, very few OBGYNs now will recommend lifestyle change. And now, unfortunately, it's also happening in the early phases, right? So unfortunately, nobody used to interfere with the onset of puberty, with the onset of menstruation. But now I'm seeing 16, 17, 18-year-olds who their doctors have prescribed birth control, either because the periods are too painful, or because 17-year-olds have PCOS, or because 17-year-olds have acne. So they are starting to interfere, which is a disaster because they're not thinking about the long-term effects. So all this to say is that perimenopause and menopause, despite the shift and despite the symptoms, are not a medical condition. They are easily reversible naturally by rebalancing the environment that these hormones are trying to function in. All right. Let me see. Shadeen, my test showed low progesterone 2 years back. Okay. And what about your estrogen? Because typically if progesterone is low, then estrogen will be higher. Gyna recommended a supplement and I refused and did the seed cycling and felt so good, didn't need to even redo the test. Amazing. There you go. Proof that there are very safe ways with no side effects, no potential long-term side effects that can help. Okay, next set of hormones. Ooh. This is everybody's favorite, stress hormones. So all of us have been to the doctor at one point or another where we do all the tests. The tests come back perfectly fine, perfectly normal, but you're not feeling fine. You're not feeling normal. You feel awful, but the doctor just has what he has. He has the information coming from inside your body through your blood test, and it all says that you're okay. And so what is their first answer, easiest answer, when they don't have a definitive answer in front of them? They tell you you're stressed. You're just stressed. Go home and stress less, or go home and relax. And you're just kind of left there like, well, that doesn't really tell me anything. I mean, everybody knows they're stressed, right? I don't need a doctor to tell me I'm stressed. All of us know to what extent we're all stressed. Here's the thing, the doctor's not mistaken. You are stressed, but here's where doctors just don't know how to take the explanation further. When you are stressed in your life, and that stress can come from an external source, or it can come from an internal source. I'm going to talk about the difference. When your body is stressed, it's going to pump more of your stress hormones, which are cortisol and adrenaline. Cortisol and adrenaline are pumped by your adrenal glands. You have two small adrenal glands that sit right on top of each kidney. Remember, your kidneys are right here where you put your hands on your waist. So on top of each kidney is an adrenal gland that it's their job to produce adrenaline, cortisol, and some other hormones as well. We're just going to focus on these two. Your stress hormones are really, really important. They were created in your body to help you deal with situations around you, right? They are what we call your flight or fight or fawn or freeze response hormones, right? They're the ones that help you decide, am I going to flee this situation? Am I going to fight this situation? Am I just going to freeze and not do anything? Or am I going to fawn and pretend like nothing's happening? That's what these hormones help you do. They help you deal with whatever situation you happen to be in. They also help to deal with what's happening inside you internally. So cortisol is an important hormone. It's not just a stress hormone. It is the hormone that basically your body uses to put out any internal fires. So if there's anything going on in your body at all, anything where there's any type of imbalance, and you don't know this because the body is miraculous, it knows how to self-regulate and self-heal. When there's an internal issue, your body's automatically going to pump cortisol to make sure that that is not going to get worse, or to make sure that this issue is not going to develop and make you really sick. So what does cortisol respond to in the body? It's going to respond when we say internal triggers. It responds to all the inflammatory foods. So every time you consume a food that is dangerous and your body knows, how is it going to calm down the effects of this food? It's going to pump cortisol, because cortisol is like the fire hydrant inside the body. It's gonna calm it down, and you don't know that. And it's okay if the body does this every once in a while, because remember ancient man from 200,000 years ago, we are literally almost exactly the same. We haven't changed in terms of our physical evolution. So in terms of stress, what did ancient man have to deal with 200,000 years ago? Not much. You know, they used to sit around in their caves, go out and hunt, bring the food, kill the food, make the food, prepare the food, eat the food, you know, go from maybe one camp to another, move from like a cold place to a hot space. Their biggest stressors came from things that literally threaten their lives. So if one of the animals they're trying to hunt turns around and tries to run after them to kill them, and they literally have to run for their life, literally flee for their life. So the body will pump an incredible amount of cortisol and adrenaline to help them literally flee for their life. And then maybe every once in a while, maybe one, you know, camp would get into a fight with another one, like a little scuffle or something. But the triggers were very far apart. Like it wasn't a daily trigger for sure. It wasn't an hourly trigger for sure. But we have this system still in place today. Okay, we're not going out fighting, we're not going out hunting, we're not going out being chased by, you know, lions and buffalo or whatever it was they were being hunted. But every time you consume an inflammatory food, and every time you are faced with a stressful trigger in your life, so a typical day, you wake up in the morning, you're already tired. Whatever reason, you didn't sleep well, you didn't sleep enough, already you're waking up tired. That's a stress trigger. So what's the first thing that you do? You reach for your cup of coffee because you need that pick-me-up, because you need the energy to get on with your day. Second stress trigger. Then if you have kids and you have a husband and they wake up and nobody wants to help out and nobody wants to get ready for school and you have to get everybody out the door and then you have to get to your office, another stress trigger. Maybe you get in the car and you have to drive through traffic jam and you have to drive through horrible traffic to get to your office. Stress trigger. Then you get to your office, you get to your job, and you find a pile of work on your desk, or a colleague is annoying, or your boss says, you know what, I pushed up this deadline, or there's this huge project you're responsible for, you know, your promotion depends on it. That's another stress trigger. So what do you do as soon as you get to your office? You grab another cup of coffee. There's another stress trigger. You work, and then everybody in your office is like, oh, okay, let's order takeout, let's order burgers, let's order Kentucky. You eat that, that's another stress trigger. You work, more stress. You run home, you need to prepare food, you need to help your kids out, you need to, if they're younger, help them get a bath, help them with homework, take them to their activities, run back, get them to bed, clean up the house, get yourself ready for the next day. Maybe, you don't find enough emotional support from your spouse. Stress, 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 stress. And because our body is, and then of course, what do you have for dinner? Maybe you made pasta, right? Maybe you ordered out because you were too tired. Stress, stress, stress. And because our bodies basically haven't evolved, the body's like, okay, there's a stress trigger. I need to help out. It's going to pump the cortisol. And every time the body pumps the cortisol, it's because it thinks you're being chased by a lion. That is our primal programming. So imagine if your body thinks you're being chased by a lion 25 times a day, and it continues to pump cortisol every single time you're stressed. You will be exhausted. Your adrenal glands are going to get exhausted. That's what leads to something called adrenal fatigue, because cortisol is an amazing hormone. It's there to help us, but only in short spurts, in short bursts, not continually. When it's continuous, this is when we see the problems. This is when we see the illness. This is when we see constant fatigue. No matter what you do, you can't seem to get your energy up, no matter how many cups of coffee a day. If your stress hormone is imbalanced, you will feel also anxious, mood swings like this. You will have a very hard time going to sleep. You might have panic attacks. And then the really obvious one is something called a cortisol belly, which again, if you feel like you're not doing anything really differently in your life, like your food is the same, whether you work out or not, it's more or less the same, but all of a sudden your midsection only seems to be getting bigger, we call that a cortisol belly. Because when there is an excess of cortisol in the body's not able to filter it out. It has to store it somewhere. It stores it in the midsection. So if your stress hormone is high, you've got adrenal fatigue, potentially, okay? You've got low blood pressure or high blood pressure. You could also have hypoglycemia. We have the constant fatigue, anxiety, panic attacks, inability to sleep, and the cortisol belly. How many of you think your cortisol is imbalanced? Stephanie, Karen, Shadeen, Hiba, Samar, Hiba. Okay, all right. Very important to identify. Let me see a couple of comments that I also missed. All the doctors told me, so all the doctors told you there's nothing wrong with you, go home and stress less, right? Hiba, what's your view on myo-inositol for PCOS? And is it a supplement to be taken forever or just 3 months and take a break? Why don't you ask me this again, Hiba, when we get to supplements next week? So next week, we have a whole class just on supplements. I can answer that for you then. Habir, completely agree with all these stresses, but oh, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. The thing is, everybody knows, I think everybody's very familiar. We recognize when there's an external trigger, because when there's an external trigger, maybe you're having a fight with your spouse, maybe you're feeling pressured at work, maybe you wake up and you're just thinking about all these things you have to do. We recognize that, and we recognize that maybe tight feeling, or maybe you have very shallow breathing. That is very easy for us to know, and it's like, right, my life is stressful. I have so many things to do and not enough time to do it, and I don't have help, and I'm overloaded, and I'm burned out, right? We recognize that. Nobody recognizes the internal triggers, right? That's never a topic. So whenever people are talking about how stressed they are, nobody's understanding or mentioning that the cup of coffee is stressing. Coffee is an incredible cortisol booster, pump the cortisol, because caffeine is basically, and the worst thing about caffeine is because your body, when you first wake up in the morning, like between 6 and 9, 9:30, This is when your body is naturally giving you a little bit of a higher dose of cortisol because it knows that those few early hours in the morning are when you are waking up and getting ready to start your day, and you need that extra push to wake up, to get ready for work, to get your family ready, do whatever it is you need to do. So if you wake up when your body's already got that extra burst of cortisol, a natural one, right? One where it's a good thing, and then you have coffee on an empty stomach, the cortisol is going to shoot up because it's a stress trigger. It's inflammatory. If you wake up and you skip meals, if you wake up and don't eat, right? So here's the thing, the link, here's another interesting link for the body. So when you eat enough of proper fuel, right? And fuel is what? Sugar. Natural sugar from fruits. This is the glucose that the body uses for fuel. Ideally, you're eating enough of this every single day. So every time you eat a fruit or you eat a smoothie or you have, some vegetables also have it, your liver uses it up and spreads it out all over your body for energy, but it also keeps a little bit of it to store, sort of like, like in case there's a famine, or just in case one day you don't have enough of this very, very high fuel food. And most people are not consuming this very, very high fuel food on a regular basis. So most people don't have this storage in their liver for when they have an off day. So you know what happens when you don't have enough glucose to fuel your day? Cortisol kicks in. So if all you've been eating is protein, mostly, and you've been avoiding fruits because somebody mistakenly told you that they're full of sugar. Yes, 100% they're full of sugar. Thank God they're full of sugar, because this is the sugar that the body uses as fuel. You've left it out, and mostly you've been eating protein with some vegetables. Then not only do you not have the initial energy for you to function, but the liver hasn't stored extra fuel either, which means your body has been running on cortisol continuously to give you the energy that you need. So if there's this overload of cortisol, and also when there's an overload of cortisol, it makes it really hard to lose weight because the body's just in a heightened state of stress all the time. So when they tell you to stress less, 100% you have to stress less. But here's how. The easiest way to start to remove stress from your body, because dealing with the external triggers, dealing with a spouse or difficult situation or a job that you don't love, those take time and they take mental sort of tactics. So we're going to get into that. But the thing that you can do immediately to lower your stress levels in your body, which is all that you're doing, is to remove the food triggers. This is literally, you start the detox, the cortisol can start taking a break. The liver can start using the sugar from fruits for fuel. It can start storing as a backup storage some of that sugar as fuel for the future. Automatically, this starts to bring your stress levels down. And then you also have to start addressing the external triggers. All right. Dina, I have all these symptoms, but I tend to sleep more than ever before. Okay, if you have more cortisol than usual, you might have reached the stage of adrenal fatigue. It also has, it's not like adrenal fatigue. There's several stages of adrenal fatigue. And no matter how much you sleep, you feel like if you're exhausted, naturally, what do we do when we're exhausted? We want to sleep. That's a very natural response to fatigue. But when it's not because of you've just had a busy day, right? You didn't just have a full day and you've been, moving from one task to the next. It's not that kind of fatigue. Adrenal fatigue, cortisol, when you have too much cortisol, that's an internal fatigue that no sleep is going to help. You have to start rebalancing the root cause, which is why is your body pumping too much cortisol? Internal triggers and external triggers. All right. Okay, last set is your thyroid and metabolic hormones. So two kinds here. When you're talking about thyroid, you either have, your thyroid is right here, by the way. You either have too much thyroid hormones, or you have too little, and basically T3 and T4. The thyroid is part of your endocrine system, and it produces the T3 and the T4. But again, here's the missing link. I'm not very competent in describing how this works. These two hormones need to be converted in order for them to be functioning properly in your body, all right? That conversion happens, guess where? In your liver. So the thyroid just produces the hormone. It's not really responsible for how the hormone functions. How the hormone functions, whether it's balanced or imbalanced, that happens in the liver. So we can't ignore the liver when we're looking at any of these hormones, right? So estrogen has to be filtered in your liver. Cortisol can be too high if the liver doesn't have enough fuel in the form of glucose, so cortisol has to kick in. Thyroid is converted in the liver. So in all cases, and this is why we're detoxing the liver for all of these issues, is because the liver is the one responsible for making sure all of these hormones function in a balanced way and optimally. So for hyperthyroidism, this is when your thyroid is producing too much thyroid hormone, right? The thyroid gland is just, for whatever reason, way more than it needs to. And this can lead to something called thyroiditis, hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease, all right? And when this is happening to you, you can feel rapid weight loss, right? Because your thyroid is like the body's thermostat. So it's heating up really, really, really fast. So like imagine when your body heats up and you're working out, you're burning a lot. So you'll lose weight really fast. As a result, you'll also have diarrhea, potentially more than usual, or you might have just loose stools all the time. Because everything is revved up, you'll have palpitations. So your heart rate is working faster than usual. Because the temperature is higher than usual, you might sweat more than usual. And you might find that as a result, your body is sort of hot all the time. Then you might have an intolerance to heat. It's very uncomfortable for you to be in heat because you have this, like a, what do you call it? You know, like a heater inside your body, right? This can also lead to anxiety, to nervousness, mood swings, trouble sleeping, all of these things that disrupt the balance. Like, how can you sleep if you're too hot? How can you sleep if you have palpitations? How can you sleep if if you just raise the temperature in your body? I mean, imagine yourself in a hot room with no AC. That's sort of what hyperthyroidism can feel like. The interesting thing though, and then yeah, what happens is your hands, this heat sort of just shows up on your hands, and like your hands only. You might feel like just your palms are red and the rest of you looks fine. Your hair, this is another interesting one. If you have curly hair, or even if you have kind of straight hair, but you're able to curl it like this and it sort of holds a curl, with hyperthyroidism, your hair becomes straighter and it can't hold a curl anymore. And your nails may become soft and break easily. So this is when it's overactive, hyperthyroidism. Okay. Underactive hypothyroidism is when it's not producing enough. It's like it's not able to give you the sufficient levels that the body needs. This is, and you'll find the symptoms are a little bit opposite, right? So instead of the rapid weight loss, we see the weight gain, even though you might not necessarily have done anything differently. You feel very tired. You feel very lethargic. You feel like you can't focus. You feel like there's brain fog all the time. You feel like, because your body feels heavy, you feel like there's aches and pains all the time. Because you can't focus, you can't concentrate, you feel like your memory is going, way before it should be going. With hypothyroidism, you're cold. With hyperthyroidism, you feel like your body's heating up. With hypothyroidism, you're cold. So you always feel like your hands or feet are always cold, even in the middle of summer, no matter what you do. Because of it underproducing, you feel like your face can be puffy. So if you ever wake up with like a puffy eyes, puffy face, you don't have loose stools, you're more on the constipated side. This is all signs of hypothyroidism. So constipation, puffy face, puffy eyes, cold hands and feet. You might even feel sudden chills for no reason. The memory loss, the brain fog, not being able to concentrate, achy body, achy joints, weight gain, cramps, hair falls out, right? With hyper, you just go straight. With hypo, it falls out, and the weight gain. So which one do you think you have, if you have, hypo or hyper? Let me know. Alternating between both. Yeah. And you know why? It's because it goes to the liver, right? So it depends on the state of your liver. Hypo, yes, very possible. Yes, very possible to go between both. Hypo, I have all the symptoms, probably more hypo. Yeah, the one that's more common is hypo. Between both, hypo. I mean, do you have any of the symptoms I've mentioned? Any of them? Also, some of them also overlap with stress symptoms, right? And like they also might overlap with the sex imbalanced symptoms. So yeah, hot flashes, weight gain. So that could just be, I mean, hot flashes and weight gain, that could just be perimenopause or menopause, right? Yeah, so here's the frustrating thing about the tests, right? Is that they can come back and tell you everything is normal when you're not feeling right. And the main reason for that is when they do the tests, they're basically testing against the average population. That's how they test like where you fit in. They're not testing optimal levels. They're testing you against an average population. And what does your average population look like anywhere in the world, right? You know, take 20 people around you that you know. Are they optimally healthy? Like they don't have any of the symptoms that we've discussed. They don't have any diagnosed medical condition. They're not taking any medication, even a Panadol or a Tylenol. No, sadly, the answer is no. Your average population happens to be very, what we call metabolically unwell. That means they are either on their way to insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, or on their way to having some kind of a thyroid issue, or on their way to having heart disease, high blood pressure, or on their way to having arthritis, depression, everything. So that's what you're getting measured against. So if you're just a little bit better than these people, then your tests are going to come out normal. Even though you don't feel okay, you know you're not okay. And this is where the confusion happens. And this is why the doctor says, well, you know, this looks fine. It's just stress. Go home and stress less. So this is why the test can be so confusing and why it's so important to focus on your symptoms. Be very specific in your list of symptoms so that you can keep track of them as they start to reverse, very gradually reduce and reverse. The missing link you explained, though, explains why the tests are okay. Our thyroid is producing okay, but how they function, that the liver, exactly. And that's the other point. They miss the point of the function of the liver in how you measure estrogen, how you measure cortisol, how you measure thyroid, 100%. All right, okay, 7:47. I still have to talk to you about insulin. That's another one of your metabolic hormones. So insulin is produced in your pancreas, right? And I think it's the one probably the one hormone when it's off, this is probably the one where doctors might say, right, you need to go change how you eat and how you live, right? Probably the only one. Insulin is really important because it's the hormone, okay, it's produced in your pancreas, into your bloodstream, and it's so important because we sort of have a fear of it, but it's so important because it's the hormone that moves whatever sugar you're consuming out of your bloodstream and into your cells. Remember, everything we're doing here is to feed your cells. You have 100 trillion cells in your body, something like that, 100 trillion cells. Millions of cells that make up every single organ, millions of cells that make up your liver, make up your stomach, make up your heart, make up your lungs, make up your skin, make up your eyes. And every single one of those cells needs to be fed. And the main fuel is glucose that comes from fruit. But where's everybody getting their sugars? What's the sugar source for everybody? Wheat, bread, pasta, cakes, cookies, sugar, you know, the processed carbohydrates. When we say essential carbohydrates, people are misunderstanding, even the medical community misunderstands, and they think essential carbohydrates, which your body 100% needs, but they think that means processed carbohydrates. No, there's no such thing. Look it up. There's no such thing as an essential processed carbohydrate. You will find that you need essential carbohydrates, and that's fruits and vegetables. That's what carbohydrates are. The original carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables. So when you eat your fruits, or when you eat your processed carbohydrates, there's sugar in your bloodstream, and it's insulin's job to take the sugar and knock on the cell's door and say, hey, I have your fuel. So if that sugar is coming from a fruit, the cells will be like, oh, wonderful, amazing, bring it in. So the insulin almost has to do nothing. This is really important to remember. Insulin almost has to do nothing to bring the sugar from fruits into your cells. The body doesn't need a lot of insulin to do that because the body recognizes the sugar from fruits. But when you're eating a sandwich or bread or a cake or a cookie or pasta, and then there's all of that sugar from that food in your bloodstream, the regular supply of insulin can't do it. It can't just bring it to your cells because the cell doesn't want it. So insulin tries the first time. It's like, all right, here, let's bring the sugar. Hey, cell, please open the door. I've got some sugar for you. And the cell's like, no, this is not the right sugar. I don't want this. Insulin's like, well, but it's here. I mean, what am I supposed to do with it? So the body will pump more insulin to work harder to bring this sugar into the cells. Keeps trying over and over and over again, each time pumping a little bit more insulin so that it can work harder to convince the cell. Cell eventually gives in, okay? And it lets it in because it's hungry, right? It's not getting any other source of sugar, so it might as well. It lets it in. But you've raised your insulin levels up here in order to bring this processed sugar into the cell. So again, if this happens once in a while, that's not a problem. The problem is that when every single meal, you're having some type of processed carbohydrate, bread, pasta, cake, cookie, croissant, pizza, you name it. So every single time insulin is trying to drive the sugar into the cell, and the cell, they have the same, conversation every single time. The cell objects, the insulin tries again, body raises level of insulin to try and convince it. So every single time you're pumping more insulin, and then the cells are like, enough. And they completely shut down. That's what's called insulin resistance. The resistance comes from the cells that have shut down because they're like, enough is enough. We don't want this fake sugar. We want the real sugar. But your insulin has been at this level for so long. So when you go and test it, it's at the very first level of diabetes, which is insulin resistance. If you keep doing this, you get to pre-diabetes. You keep doing this, you get to diabetes. That's how that happens. It's because insulin, which is, again, it's not a hormone that was created to work against you. All your hormones are there to serve you and to serve a real important purpose. It's just doing its job. It's trying to get the sugar into the cell because it knows the cell needs to be fed. But you keep giving it the wrong sugar. So it keeps trying and trying, and the cell keeps trying and trying till they can't do it anymore. the body's quite resilient. It will keep trying for many years because insulin resistance, prediabetes, diabetes, it might seem like they suddenly appear one day when you're 45, but that's actually been building since you were a child. Adult onset chronic diseases have been slowly building in your body since childhood. That's how resilient the body is. That's how long the body has been trying to protect you till it reaches a breaking point. And typically that breaking point happens to be in that what we call middle age. So everybody just associates it with getting old. Oh, well, that's what happens, when you're in your 40s. You get insulin resistance. Everybody in my family has diabetes. I'm going to get diabetes. Everybody in my family has high blood pressure. And it happens to happen at the same time just because the body has been trying for so long and then can't do it anymore. So if you have any type of constantly elevated insulin or insulin resistance, the first thing that's going to cause is non-alcoholic fatty liver. So this is very interesting because of the word fatty. We think that when somebody has a non-alcoholic fatty liver, it's because they're eating too much fat. Yes and no. If you're eating a high protein diet, all protein, eggs, yogurt, meat, chicken, eggs, yogurt, and no fruits and vegetables, or very, very little, you can end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver. But also if you're eating all the foods that turn into sugar, because sugar turns into fat. So when the insulin is trying to move this sugar into your cells and it's not able to, do you know what it has to do with it? Remember, if something doesn't go through the body, through the regular channels, it's very difficult to eliminate it. So what does insulin do with this sugar that has no use? It takes the sugar and it stores it as fat cells. So insulin is also known as the fat storage hormone. So you don't gain weight and get fat from just eating fat. Well, definitely you can, especially if it's the wrong fat and if it's too much fat. For most people, it's happening from overconsumption of the processed carbohydrates that turn into fat in the body. Insulin has to put it away where it's as far away from your organs as possible to protect your organs. And where does that usually end up being? On your thighs, on your outer hips, on your upper arms, and in your belly as well. So if you see again, your belly getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that's a sign of insulin imbalance. If you're constantly craving food, right? So if all your poor cells, they're starving and all they're getting is processed food, they're not getting any of the sugar, the right sugar and the right fuel. No matter how much you feed them, they're going to keep giving back to you the signal that they're hungry, which to you comes through as a craving. So you could eat a whole bowl of pasta by yourself. You can go have a whole pan of macaroni bechamel by yourself. And you can be hungry 2 hours later because none of that went to feed your cells. As long as they're hungry, they're going to keep giving you the hunger signal, which you interpret as a craving and as a lack of willpower and like, I can't get over myself. It's just your cells starving. So this is a really important one. The other one, and they're not really sure why this happens, if you have insulin resistance or prediabetes, this raises your chances of PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. All right. There's also, of course, the link between that and high blood pressure, right? So again, this is where cortisol comes in. So they're linked. So because cortisol is produced in your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, when your body has to deal with too much sugar, that's a stress trigger. So what does the body do? It pumps more cortisol. And when the body pumps more cortisol, a potential effect of that is high blood pressure. All right, ladies, that was the last one. Tell me, where are you guys? I lost my screen. Hang on. What? Why can't I find my screen? Hang on. Guys, can you see me?
Yes.
Yes,
You, I lost.
Yes.
Yes, yes, we can see
Yes,
you.
Donna, we
we
can.
can.
I
Yeah.
can't see you at all. I don't know where my screen went. Hang on. I have no, like, my screen is gone. I'm afraid to click on anything and close the meeting. Oh, wow.
We can see you.
Okay. All right. I don't know where you guys went. Anyway, so how many of you think that you've got an insulin resistance problem? You're gonna have to tell me because I can't see the chat.
Me, definitely.
All right.
Hi, Dana.
Uh,
أنا هبة. Me too.
Hi,
هبة
Heba.
بس.
Hi. Okay, so again, this is not to overwhelm you and this is not to scare you. This is to explain to you why everything makes sense in the body. Everything. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing happens out of the blue. Nothing happens because it's genetic, right? You might have the genetic weakness, right? So maybe you've inherited this weakness. Maybe everybody in your family, yes, has diabetes, yes, has cancer, has whatever. And yes, you've inherited that DNA potentially, but that DNA is not the disease. You've inherited the potential for the disease. You've inherited the weaker organ that might lead to that disease. And it will, as I've told you before, lead to that condition and lead to those symptoms if you do exactly as your parents have done, right? If you do exactly, eat exactly, and who doesn't, unless they make a very conscious effort not to, right? If you continue to eat exactly like how your parents ate throughout their lives until old age, and as you saw them progress and as you saw the conditions slowly come up one by one, where you see this very gradual erosion, very gradual decline into old age. If you do exactly the same thing, and the majority of people do, then yes, they end up with the same conditions and then just say, oh, because it's genetic. It's not genetic. What you also inherited a lifestyle. You might have inherited the weakness, but more than the weakness, you have the same lifestyle has been passed down onto you and you've done nothing to change it. So of course, there's a cause and effect to everything. If you break that cycle, change everything about what you're doing, about how you're eating and living and breathing, you're not. I mean, I'm 50 right now, but when my parents were both 50, between them, they both had diabetes. My mother had her uterus taken out because of all the fibroids. She had her gallbladder taken out because she shed too many stones. She had arthritis, still has, and my father had diabetes. He had by 50, had the beginning of a heart disease. So 10 years later, by 60, he had to have a quadruple bypass. He had high blood pressure. It's not an accident that I don't have any of these. And it's not because I'm special. I've been on this path for the past 11 years. So when my parents were in their 40s, when the symptoms would show up and it would be, oh, this is just symptoms of aging, they just accepted it. I mean, especially my father was a doctor. So they didn't do anything. When they started to feel the symptoms, when they got diagnosed with the conditions, it was like, oh, okay, this is just old age. It's just what happens. And maybe somebody in my grandparents also had the same things. I'm not sure. Nobody did anything to change anything about how they were living. And that's how, everybody that I know lives. Nobody does anything. Once they hit that phase and they start to see the symptoms, instead of that being a wake-up call for them or like a moment to take stock, the programming is, this is supposed to happen. And if this is in my family and it's genetic, then it's supposed to happen. People are just like, all right, I'll just live with it. I can't. And then doctors tell you there's nothing you can do about it, right? They tell you, especially if it's genetic, you can't do anything about it. Or they give you other solutions that are, again, don't get to the root cause. So we know there is another way. and we know we can choose another way, and understanding the cause and effect of every little imbalance is so important in order for you to actually make that change. That empowerment is what I'm talking about. All right. Again, I can't see anybody still. If you guys have a question for me, please just ask it and tell me who's asking the question.
Dana, I want to ask you, it's Sally.
Hi,
Okay.
Sally.
I want to ask you today, especially today, my back, when I went out, I feel heaviness, you know, not pain, but heaviness, like on top of the kidneys or higher back. I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
like as if I'm exhausted. It was just going out, yani. I did nothing extra.
Right.
And it's still till now, you know, I feel heaviness.
This is very, very normal, feeling the heaviness in your kidneys, on or around your kidneys, because your kidneys are a major filtration organ. So the same way that we're, jump-starting the liver, and we'll keep focusing on the liver, but actually what we're doing is we're jump-starting all your detoxification organs. So the liver, the kidney, your entire lymphatic system, your skin. So if you feel soreness around that area, that's just because the kidney is working properly again. And you might also feel some soreness around your liver. Some people might feel that also. So this is nothing to worry about, but you don't want to stay in discomfort. So one way to overcome that is you can either take an Epsom salt bath, literally soak your body in the Epsom salts, or you can rub magnesium oil spray on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, who is it? Anybody else have a question for me? I can't believe that I lost my screen. Like this has never happened to me before. All right. So go ahead. Is somebody trying to ask a question?
Abir, I think Abir Sliman.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead, Abir, go.
Yeah. I'd like to ask about two. Okay, one that I don't remember now. Yes, night we are supposed to drink lemon water and this and an apple. Okay, why did this at maybe you remember that early?
You're a bit choppy, Abir, so I can't really hear your question in full. Do you mind, please, if you can write out your question for me in the group? Because I don't know how to give you a right answer because you're chopping up, and plus I can't see or hear properly anyway right now. Okay?
Type what about now? You can hear me well now?
Yes, it's a
It's
bit
better now.
Yes, it's a bit better. Yes.
Yes. Okay. For these days, the schedule for these days, we are supposed to drink 500 ml of lemon with water and hibiscus at night. Okay, before 9. But do you remember that I am that kind of person that sleeps early?
Yes.
And wake up early.
Yes.
Okay, so when I slept around 10 p.m. and then during the whole night I waked up many times.
To pee?
Almost
Go to the bathroom?
yeah, to the bathroom.
Right.
I remember those days when we were pregnant, and by the end of the month, every 1.5 hour,
awful time.
I didn't sleep well. Yesterday it was one of the bad nights for me. So what can I do about this?
Let me ask
I tried
what time
to take them.
Yeah, what time did you have them? At what time?
Maybe yesterday it was exactly at 9 or something like that, like this. Today I tried to take them earlier.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
So I can sleep, but
yes.
How much earlier? Can I take them before 7?
Yeah, definitely Generally, like any liquid intake for anybody should be also stopped 3 or 4 hours before bedtime. For the same
Yes.
way that we stop eating 3 or 4 hours, you would also stop the liquid intake 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. Yes.
So, it's it will be okay if I took them earlier than the period that you wrote in the schedule to
So
take
if
them.
you're having if you're having your dinner between 5 and 7, which is the ideal time to have your last meal,
Yes.
let's say right now you're having your dinner at 7, then I would bring the dinner back or up to 5 o'clock, for example. So give yourself some time and maybe start the drinks at 6 o'clock or 6:30 to be done by 7. Yeah.
Okay. I yes, really today I brought my dinner earlier, and I wait till it's 7, and then I started drinking them. Okay. Yes. Yes. Another question, please. I remembered it now. Also, يعني for strange thing, it's the same sensation that we feel also during pregnancy. You know that feeling of nausea that we feel
Yes.
in the early pregnancies,
Yes.
but I feel it only when I am in the car and when I am moving, maybe for more than 15 minutes. But it's not that strong that we feel during pregnancy. No, it's little, but
Yeah.
it's so much annoying me. I'm not that kind of person that feels that nausea on movement, and so what can I do about it?
This is nausea again in general. When we're detoxing, this is a sign of detoxification. So this is a sign of toxicity leaving your liver. So either it's a lot of toxicity leaving or a lot of toxicity leaving very fast, and that can cause the nausea. And that sometimes can be accompanied by vomiting as well. So you pinpoint when does it happen in the morning after your celery, lemon celery, and smoothie?
No, it happens. It happens only when I am in a car and it's moving.
But
Not
is there a meal before that or a snack or nothing?
Okay, let me remember. Yesterday it happened at almost 6 p.m. So this was after lunch. No. That was after the 2 apples and 4 dates.
Okay.
In the middle, and then today it happened. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Around 11:30. 11 or no, sorry, around 1 o'clock. Yes. Also, after I took my first fruit, the 2 apples and the 4 dates that you take.
So it's the fruit. So here's how we're gonna determine if it's your body, just releasing a lot of toxins, or maybe you've got some motion sickness. Is there a day where you won't be getting in the car and won't be going anywhere?
Yes, maybe tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. So spend the whole day at home tomorrow. Don't get in a car and let's see what happens.
Okay.
Just so we can just start to I mean, it could be something that as a detox symptom, it's eventually going to go away, right? If it's more of a motion sickness issue, this is actually also related back to the liver, but then we would have to just deal with it a little bit differently. So tomorrow, just let me know if you spend the whole day eating exactly what you ate today, if you feel the same feelings or not.
Okay. Inshallah. Yes. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Can I see anybody have one last question for me? I can't see you.
Yes, Dana,
Go ahead.
it's me, Heba Bassiouni.
I have.
What about the salt? Because I consume a lot of salt.
That's fine. Is it sea salt?
Also to taste, because the veggies are horrible, to be honest.
There's no problem with salt, right? It's
Okay.
another misconception.
Because it's always written a pinch of salt. What's this pinch of salt? It's so
like,
little.
like this.
I consume much more. Yeah. No,
If you
I
need
consume
it,
much more.
if you
Yeah.
need it, then take it. It's not a problem. As long as you're having the right salt, so not the commercial salt. As long as you're having
No,
sea
no.
salt, salt is
Yeah.
not salt. You don't
I
get,
use the Himalaya salt.
that's fine. You don't get sick from salt. Salt is an essential mineral that our body needs, right? So
Okay.
the problem, you don't get high blood pressure, you don't get any of these things from salt. Again, they happen from eating the processed carbohydrates that cause the cortisol that comes from the adrenals. The adrenals sit on top of the kidneys. That's what causes the high blood pressure. High blood pressure in general is regulated by your adrenals and regulated by your kidneys. It doesn't happen from salt. It happens from cortisol having to respond to an internal stress trigger.
But it has nothing to do with thirst because I'm always thirsty at night.
No, it has nothing to do with thirst either. No,
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Dana, I just wanted to ask a quick question. It's Sally. The timings, sometimes I'm a bit changing the time. Like today, I had the snack, the apples, because I was out 12:30 or 1 o'clock. I couldn't have it again in the afternoon, and I had my lunch like after 4:30, and then my dinner 6:30. So is this?
That's okay. I've had this question from, I think, almost all of you. You're all trying to figure out the new timings for when to eat. So like I told you from day one, you really can't do this wrong, right? You skip a snack here, you delay a meal here while you're in the process of learning. It's not going to throw off all of your results, right? It's not. So, but it's really important, but then just to figure out, right, so maybe I have some days during the week, like sort of look at your week as a whole. Maybe I know that I have some days during the week where I'm a lot busier than usual, or maybe I'm out of the house, or I have more meetings in the office than usual. So maybe those days need you to plan accordingly versus the days when everything is running smoothly and you can have everything on time. So start to look at your in general, what's the pace of every single day? Because not every single day is the same. Not every single day you're doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time with the exact same people with the exact same energy. So start to look at like this overreaching sort of arc of the energy of your days, the pace of your days, and see how you're going to fit your food in accordingly. So right now, so what's happening now, this is just information for you, right? So like, right, on a day like this, here's what happens. I end up missing this and I end up having the snack here, end up having my lunch later. So what can I do when I know that I have 2 or 3 days like this a week? You want to preempt it. How can I be better prepared for this day ahead of time?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome. All right, ladies, 8:16. Great session as usual. I will see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. I don't know how to end the meeting because I can't see the meeting, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I hope that this meeting is still recording and I can upload it. But if it doesn't,
it is recording. It is
oh,
recording.
it is? Okay,
Don't
wonderful.
worry.
Okay, hopefully
And everybody's still there.
Okay, all right. I wonder if one of you can end the meeting. Can one of you try clicking end? Do you see end the meeting anywhere or not?
Yeah, I can. I'll try. Leave.
Try. I'm gonna say goodbye, and I want you all to try to end the meeting, please.
Thank you so much,
All
Dana.
right. Good night.
Thank you,
ladies.
Dana.
See you
Goodbye.
tomorrow.
It
Bye-bye.
was really great. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dana. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
I got it. I found it. Bye.